It was 2017, and we were getting destroyed in the commercial insurance and wellness space by Dr. Oz and Oprah. Yes, that Dr. Oz and that Oprah, plus Jeff Arnold, who actually ran the digital health company we were competing against. They had celebrities, but we had better data, we had better outcomes, and we had better products because I was in charge of leading the products. But we kept losing. At first, it was a $10 million deal gone. And then the next week, another $8 million deal was gone. We'd spent over a year working on these major deals that were going to change the trajectory of our startup significantly. And our losses that we ended up getting second place in multiple deals that were huge, it led to our venture capitalists that we were pitching to pulling back on their promised funding. I had to lay off half my team, and it hurt, still hurts to today. These people took a chance on me for their livelihood, and I let them down. And then I saw it. I had made a mistake in our strategy. Our product wasn't built for the commercial wellness space that we were competing in. It was perfect for a slightly different market, the Medicare Advantage and Medicaid health insurance market in the US. It's a market that gets paid for having healthier patients, and that's what our product did. But that's not the market we were operating in. But this story isn't about my blunders in strategy and leadership. It's about what happened next to pull us out of that trough of despair. So I started validating this realization and a potential pivot. I did all the market analysis, the competitive landscaping, choosing our unfair advantages, really understanding the regulations in this new area because it was a regulated market. I built the entire strategy. That part took 3 weeks. But getting everyone aligned behind it, that took 6 months. First, I had to convince my technology peers that we weren't going to have to rebuild everything. And then my sales and marketing peers that we could win here. Then the CEO that this was the right bet when we were already struggling. Then the board to fund a pivot when they had just seen us flop multiple times. And finally to the 75 shaken up employees who just saw us go through layoffs and who needed to understand why we were making this choice and then actually care about it. See, the strategy work was the easy part. The storytelling was the real work. I had to use the same facts, but then use 7 different versions for 7 different audiences. It was the same business case, but making different emotional hooks for each individual. See, the quality of strategy mattered less than the quality of the story in that moment. As we saw before, the quality strategy does matter, but how are you going to get your point across? The actual logical decision doesn't matter as much. See, product managers, you actually have 2 different jobs. The first one is figuring out what to build, and it's what should you build, not what can you build. Let's be honest with that and clear. So you're going to do market research, you're going to do the customer interviews, you're going to do the competitive analyses like I did. And most product managers spend most of their time here, assuming they're out of just doing delivery work. That's a different lightning lesson and topic altogether. So if you do a little bit of strategy, you're doing these things to make sure you can figure out what's the right thing we should be building. And AI is making this part easier. Now, the second job is to get everyone to believe you're right. Your boss has to approve your roadmap. Your boss's boss then funds it. Engineering has to understand why it matters. Your designers need to care enough to do their best work too. Your team needs to feel excited and not confused. So there's a shift happening in all of this, in that AI is replacing the repetitive executors. It's changing how we work, of course, everybody sees it. But what happens is it's actually accelerating clear thinkers and communicators. Your job is actually becoming more about communication than it ever was. So here's some evidence of that. I today write maybe 100 times more than I ever did 2 years ago. I used to do a lot of thinking and talking, and then I'd write some down in my epics and features and user stories and things like that and decks. But now, if I want to use the tools that are out there, if I want to communicate clearly to ChatGPT or Claude or anything else, I have to write very clearly and compellingly that way as well, and then use that to communicate to humans too. And this isn't just in product management. I talked to a VP of engineering this past weekend. Even he, who is a hands-on coder, he's writing 10 times more prose than code. He's no longer writing code. It's about him being a clear communicator as well. All of our jobs are tilting towards this clear communication and convincing others. You have to be able to tell your stories clearly. So how do we do that? Here's what strategic storytelling actually is. And first, it's not charisma, it's not personality, it's not presentation skills. Yes, those things help. They can accelerate or accentuate what you're able to do. But what strategic storytelling really is connecting your idea to what each person personally cares about. You're going to hit both their emotional and logical buttons with your amazing strategic decision. How's it going to land? You have to do it this way. So you tell your story about your strategy strategically. So you're going to follow a structure. You don't have to have a certain personality trait. A lot of people think that presentations are about being extroverted. I love getting up in front of a crowd and talking to a bunch of people. You don't have to. Actually, most of the people that I see that are best at doing these kinds of pitches are really introverts because they understand individual audience members' biases, what they care about, and they use it to their advantage to be able to connect better to the individuals in the audience. So you're going to follow a 3-act structure. First, what we're going to do is bring up the human stakes. You need to make people feel it, okay? You're going to use things like a specific time or place or situation, okay? Make them feel the human part of the problem. Then you're going to scale. You're going to show why it matters to your business, and you're going to use numbers. You're going to also do a little bit of adaptation to make sure that those numbers you use are going to matter to the people you're talking to. And finally, your solution becomes obvious. Once you get people hooked on the emotion, and then now they can use the logic to support it, the solution works. See, what happens is the emotion opens the door to a new idea. Then your data that you bring validates what the emotion has already sold. We make decisions emotionally, and then we look to numbers and logic to rationalize them. So this is reinforces the existing decision they've already made. And then your solution just walks through an open door. Now, if you go in reverse order here, your solution is knocking on a locked door, and you're not going to have success. So let's go through it step by step here. Act 1, the human stakes. We're going to make each person feel what's happening. We want to build that empathy. And you can do this when you're talking to an individual on your engineering team. You can do this as you're talking to a CEO. You can do it to a large audience. All of these things matter to where you want to make somebody feel what you've already felt, the research you've done, the people you've talked to. So we can do that, but let's not do it formulaically. Let's use varying versions to try to hook people in different ways. Let me give you some examples that you can use. It's 2:47 a.m. This is the 3rd night this week that this nurse is manually entering the same patient data into 3 different systems. So there's a certain moment that we can highlight and bring that frustration to bear as we speak about it. Maybe it's a contradiction. Hey, we tell the market that we're all this AI-powered platform, right? That's in our marketing material. But when the customers actually look at what we do and watch us work, they see that we're manually reviewing all of these hospital cases, these patient cases. So we're selling a lie here. They can feel that contradiction and be a little bit embarrassed about it, maybe. The missed opportunity. Drop somebody's name here. Sarah closed the deal. But 4 months later, it died in implementation because we couldn't integrate with their EHR. Bring that frustration to bear. What is Sarah really feeling? You can bet that Sarah's pissed off, right? This has happened to her over and over again, right? And that's not acceptable to her or us. Maybe it's a question you put back on your audience. So how many times this week did you have to apologize for something that wasn't your fault? They can feel that situation themselves. They are now the human at stake that we're empathizing with. Flip it back on them. And then lastly, the consequence. So Dr. Patel, another name here, gets paged to the ER Wednesday afternoon. We're putting in a specific visual thing. The patient that she saw on Monday, 2 days ago, is now septic and admitted to the ICU. The system tried to warn her, but she didn't see it because it was buried in her queue. So that's a serious consequence that people in this healthcare field really feel and understand. So we're making it tangible for them, making it visceral. Use elements like a specific time, place, person, or situation. Use a concrete detail that makes it real. Make it costly, emotional, or business costs. Follow this pattern to really hook people from the beginning as you start speaking. Then you're going to take that micro, a single person, a single situation, and you're going to shift to the macro. So you want to make them feel it first, and then you're going to show this isn't just one example, or this is just one example of many, right? You're going to take this little kernel and turn it into a bigger picture, expand the vision that the audience has, and you're going to make them feel it and then show them the scale. So some bridging phrases to move from Act 1 now to Act 2. Hey, this isn't isolated, it's systematic. You know that manual entry we talked about? That's not one time. 2,400 times per day across all of our customers. Sarah, she's not unique, or Dr. Patel, she's not unique. She's just one of 200 physicians that we have. They're doing this same thing. We've gone and reviewed this and interviewed all of them, looked at their data. This is happening everywhere. You know that 2:47 a.m. moment with the nurse? It's happening in 68% of our hospitals. And you know what? It's costing the industry $840 million annually. Not just our customers, but all the other prospects that we could win over too. So what we're going to do is take that small element they already care about and make them care about it more, because we're saying it's a much bigger problem than you think. Now, what we have to do though is not just stop with something surprising, a surprising detail that gets them looking at it. We need to adapt to each stakeholder's hidden priorities as well. So whoever's in the room, you need to be a bit of an improv actor here and figure out what's going to appeal or work with each one. And planning and preparation help, but sometimes you have to be able to look somebody in the eye and know what they care about. How do you figure that out? We're going to do something called the "what would get them fired" test. Not because we're trying to get people fired, but actually we want to try to talk about doing the opposite. But we use the "what would get them fired" to figure out what secretly drives each person. We can't tell the same story to everybody because the same story doesn't matter to everybody. The same metric of success doesn't matter to this every single person. So there's secrets that drive every individual. What's going to keep them up at night? That's a classic question. What metrics are they tracking subconsciously is more of my favorite. So let's look at some examples. So let's say you're talking to a tech leader, CTO, or a VP of engineering. What's going to get them fired? Performance of the product is terrible. That's going to lead to that. Or if they're not automating things and lots of manual processes everywhere and they're not doing anything about it, that might do it too. The system's down, or your team's velocity is really slow because of some reason. So those are the problems. So what you want to do is talk to the opposite of those things. So how can you talk about solving the problem that you just brought up is going to help with scale? It's going to help with cost efficiency and automation and the other things that they're going to be the buzzwords for them, the velocity that we have, the frequency of deployment, predictability of different things. How can you make them a hero with what you're bringing up as your possible solution, which you haven't even brought up yet? You just talked about the problem. Revenue generators and defenders, people that are in sales or customer success, do you think they care about the performance as much? They do, but what they really care about is their quota. They really care about whether they're winning the deals or losing customers. So how do you flip that, right? How do you increase their pipeline? How do you increase their conversion rates or their belief that this idea will help them win more often? Your stodgy CFO or maybe VP of operations, right? They hate unpredictability. They hate compliance failures. So flip that around. How are you going to improve ROI, cost per unit? How are you going to improve efficiency? How are you going to improve margin and predictability of that we're going to meet our budget? And lastly, when we think about the prime leaders that are thinking about our strategic advantages, what gets them fired? A CEO. If they lose market position, if they make a strategic bet that fails, famously, right, in flames, or if they get outmaneuvered by competitors. So you flip that around. How do we build the strategic differentiation? How do we build a moat or competitive advantage and increase our market share? So these are now metrics. Everything is math. Everything can be math. You start with emotion, you turn it into math, but math has to matter to the individual because everybody has metrics in the back of their mind, even if they don't say it. So here's some examples of adapting the idea. So we talk about Dr. Patel's story and her as a physician, there's 200 of them doing this daily. Now we're going to make eye contact with each individual when we talk to them. This is also just a presentation technique, right? You're not speaking to the board and just reading off all the numbers over and over again. You want to connect with each individual human. So you look at the CTO and you say, that's 200 hours daily of manual triage, right? There's a buzzword that they care about, manual work. That's not good. Hey, why don't we throw in some automation? That's a good one, right? So use some words that work for them. You turn to the clinical ops person. You say, hey, there's 23 different interventions that were delayed because of our current system. And you know what that leads to? It leads to higher acuity care, which is really costly care. It's more risky care in healthcare, and it leads to worse outcomes. Your clinical person doesn't want that, right? They want a solution to those things. You turn to your boss, the VP of product maybe. Hey, every competitor of ours is demoing this, and we've got nothing. And this is why we're not winning deals. We're losing deals. We don't have a differentiation. And we can take this and leapfrog our competitors with this idea. And lastly, to the CEO, hey, this isn't just a feature that we're making. It's actually a foundation for our future. So you're showing long-term thinking, which is what the CEO is going to be caring about too. They care about winning now, but they care about winning big as well. So this is a compounding advantage. And this is all from the same story. So what you're going to do next is you've opened the door, right? You've justified everything. Now you're going to take that and make the solution obvious. It should be easier now. The emotional story to the metrics that matter to each person. Now your solution is something they're looking for. They're asking you, what is it that you're proposing? What do we do about it? Help us here. And but you still have to connect it to the business impact so that people believe it. It's got to be connected. So how do we make them believe it and show the connection? We're going to use something called a hypothesis framework. Use this Mad Lib here. We believe that if we helped the user persona from our story do the user task with that pain point that we talked about better, then that would help them achieve their goal. User success of that pain elimination. So Dr. Patel no longer has to manually look through these severe or critical issues that are probably happening but are hidden. And by improving that user success metric, it's going to help improve their overall job goal, their overall customer goal, and which is going to help us get to our goal that we're looking for. More sales, better automation, all the different things of the buzzwords we talked about. So what we're doing here is being a good product manager and anchoring on the problem first, again, over and over again. Remember, we haven't even actually brought up the solution yet. We're anchoring on the problem so that they want to know all the ways that we could potentially solve this, but solving it matters before we can then debate about the solution. Now you've got to adapt this a little bit more too, whether you're in B2B or B2C or B2B2C. But the premise is you don't have to use this exact framework. And I don't ever suggest you use any exact framework. I've got a million of them, but you need to figure out what's going to work in your situation. The premise is you're going to say, I believe that if we solve this problem, it's going to make a difference. So Muli, there's your simple one. You want to make it simple. We believe we solve this problem, it's going to make a difference for them. It's going to make a difference for us. Believe it, speak it. Okay. Here's an example of it. So we believe that if we helped physicians like Dr. Patel identify urgent cases faster, instead of manually scanning 60 cases looking for buried urgencies, then that would help them prevent delayed interventions and hit 0 missed critical escalations. So complicated technical words, but those people understand them. And by eliminating these delayed interventions, remember there were 23 patients last quarter that this happened to that had worse outcomes. By eliminating delayed interventions that led to those worse outcomes, the clinical operations team is going to improve their patient safety scores. They're going to reduce these escalations to the ICU. And you know what that does? That helps them achieve better health outcomes and lower cost per member or per patient. And that's what the market thrives on. That's how they get paid. So now we've associated a user problem all the way up to a market system incentive. So we've connected it and gotten it bigger. And so connect it to our business and then the market and how we're going to win with that value proposition. Now you can share your idea and make the ask. Hey, by the way, we've already tested this and figured out a way to solve it. Oh, great. Finally, we're getting to it. We're going to set up a smart alert system that can predict and escalate issues faster. It's a small ask of this, and we're going to ship it first here in a small test case with 50 physicians, then the full network in the next quarter. And we predict this is the ROI. But you know what? The real value is going to be coming from setting up the foundation, because we can now build intelligence upon this with each new release that comes through. So what do typically people do? Hey, we should build X because the market data shows this Y logic and the ROI is Z. Anybody have any questions about why I am not brilliant? That's the way I used to do it too. I thought everybody could see all the work that I did and how I can think and how smart I am. And my intellect was going to show, and everybody was going to believe it because of that. And that's not what happened, because people care about themselves. They care about what matters to them, even if they don't want to say it. So you've got to appeal to that. Again, they also don't see your mode of thinking. You might have been doing this for weeks, right? They don't know all that history. What can get them to visualize that is a story about a simple person to make them feel the problem first. Then you can now make them the logical hero by showing that this is a big issue that they should care about as well. And then finally, the solution just makes a lot of sense. So when we think about pitching, you're going to follow that process. But there are more things you can do that are really small tactics to make your pitch land with more than the intellect that I just mentioned. Sure, the structure and approach, but let me give you a couple more tips in how to speak well to make it work. First, know that this is what's going to help you win in the room and in your career. You need to build a foundation of competence. You need to have, yes, the intellect, the research, the backing, the right decision made. And then you can walk into the room with confidence. So competence first, then confidence as a result of your competence. And that's going to lead to influence. So how do we think about this? So confidence, when we think about all those charismatic people that are executives but are not actually smarter than you, they got into the room because they have a skill in confidence. What's going to keep you there once you get there? That's the competence part of it. That's going to keep you at the table, because we always rise to the level of our incompetence. You may have heard that phrase before. It is also a real situation. We see people rise and they're like, why are you here? It's because they had a friend here, or they could speak well, or they impressed people. People liked them. That is a skill. So you have to acknowledge that part of it. They've done something well. But are their decisions the right ones? Not necessarily. Are they thinking about this the right way? Are they trained in some way? No, but you are. So you need to just add the confidence part to your competence. So here's how to use your voice to add a little bit more to it, to appear more confident, even if you aren't. First, go slower and lower. When you speed up and talk really fast, people think you're insecure. But if you go slower and lower with your voice, go use bass. Whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. Lower it down and slow it down. It comes across as more confident. You're also going to state facts. You're going to use a downward inflection, which gives no opportunity for someone to question what it is you're saying in the middle of your speech. You're not inviting questions. You're telling people about what you know and why they should find it interesting. Strategic pauses before and after. Key points. What you want is people to disrupt their current mode of thinking. If you are speaking monotonously and it keeps going for a while, they're going to zone out and start doing everything, especially in this virtual world. I bet half of you are not actually listening. But if I were to go and pause, people are going to wait, what's going on? What am I missing? They're going to lean back in and start paying attention to what's coming immediately next. So use those pauses. Replace your filler words with silence. I definitely used a few filler words here, but this took a lot of work for me to get comfortable not saying and all this stuff in between for my segues, and just get comfortable with silence for a moment. Lastly, vary your pitch, your volume, your pace of tone. What's going to happen is you're going to create this audible interest because you can start this way and then you can slow it down. You can even whisper. People lean in. It creates some audible interest, right? Make it a little bit different, right? We think about visual interest in movies. Do the same thing with your storytelling. You want to go up and make things big and then make things small and make people care. Make it sad, make it powerful, make it frustrated, make it angry. Use some emotion in your voice to create the audible interest. And that biggest thing is that silence. After presenting a key number, pause for a full 3 seconds because the person who's comfortable with silence is going to control the room. You will find that you are the stronger person when you can sit there for 3 seconds on the phone, in a room, waiting, wait for the other person to crack. Try it. It's a fun game to start with too. Do it in low stakes situations, and then you can use it in high stakes ones. All right, so let's take a look at some examples of a good, a better, and a best. So we're going to take the same pitch, and we're going to move into seeing how we can improve upon it, okay? So first, let's say we're going to be a good product manager, and we're going to propose that we build an AI case prioritization system. All right, the current problem. Physicians are reviewing 40 cases daily in chronological order, and the urgent cases are getting buried. Good, there's problem anchoring. Second, there's a large market for this. Clinical decision support's growing 18% annually to $2 billion business. Awesome. Hey, and we have a strategic advantage. We've got 5 years of data that we can use for model training. Awesome. We've already tested this and it's feasible also. Fantastic. And there's ROI and it's only a short ask. A lot of good things here, all logical components, clear problem statement, market validation. You've got feasibility risk analysis. What's missing? You've got no emotional reason to care about it. You got the same message for everybody. It doesn't speak to anybody's priorities individually, but it was a good pitch, right? Let's get rid of that spam if we can. Next is, let's make this a little bit better. So let's start talking about this, and we're going to add in some more emotion. Okay. So Monday morning, Dr. Patel, she's logging into 47 different cases, and here's what the system is doing. And here's what's happening. This person has mild symptoms on the surface, but you know what? There are clinical indicators getting buried in the notes. But she doesn't see it till Wednesday. But by then it's too late. Person's already in emergency surgery. And this happens because physicians are manually scanning for these things. And after this happened, Dr. Patel, you know what she did? She went back and reviewed all 60 of her cases, checking to see if she missed anything else. Because it's not working for her. And this is the 4th time this has happened this month. How severe is that? And she's actually one of 200 physicians doing this all the time, 200 hours daily, working on manual triage. And we can fix this. We can fix this with AI prioritization. We've already tested it. We validated it. And we piloted it, and it's going to work. So this has improved quite a bit. This is actually a pretty good pitch, right? We've got people to feel things, but we can make it even better by adding in the specific things that each stakeholder cares about too. So we go back through and we look at the best version. The Act 1, we've already covered that story. I'm not going to reread it. So we still talk about the situation of Dr. Patel. Then we look at each individual stakeholder and we talk about the things that matter to each one of them in the eye with eye contact. And then lastly, this is where we talk about our beliefs and why the solution that we've come up with matters to Dr. Patel, to the 200 different physicians that are out there, our customers, and then also to our business. We predict we can actually solve for this. We've tested it. It's going to work. And we've gotten great feedback already in our pilot. Dr. Patel actually said this is the first feature that feels like it works for me instead of adding to my day. So we believe that if we helped all physicians like Dr. Patel identify these cases, then that would help them catch more critical conditions earlier and prevent these emergency escalations. And if we prevented all these emergency escalations, you know what that does? That helps the clinical operations scores go up. It helps reduce the costly emergency interventions that are there. It improves health outcomes per patient. It lowers the cost per patient. And that's what the market works off of. We're going to help our customers succeed in the market. And you know what that's going to do for us? It's going to help us win more because we can show those case studies that we're helping them make more money and serve their patients better. So all we're asking here is a small element to build this starting feature, but it's not just a feature, it's a foundation for the future that gets smarter as we go. So what we've done here is we've now added in a strong belief of a solution that's going to fit the user and the market and our business and each stakeholder's different nuanced bias that they have. And then talk about the future. We're also future thinking in all of this stuff. That's really what strategic thinking is about, is plotting a way that we're going to win in the future, and we're going to take these steps to get there. So remember, Act 1, emotional stakes, make it specific and real and immediate. Then talk about each stakeholder's priority, address separately, and validate the emotion with data as you're doing it. The solution then becomes inevitable. Platform thinking is more like long-term thinking. This is the start of something big. Those are compelling types of pitches for solutions. Okay, so you've got the recording for this if you want. I'm also going to leave you with an AI accountability partner. What it's going to do is not think for you here, but it's going to help you follow the structure that we went through, because there's a lot that was in here. So what I've done is I've created, through writing and working with Claude Code and other things like that, to be able to create a very long prompt of sorts for you to take. You can put it into a skill in Claude. You can make a GPT out of it. In ChatGPT, you can take it and stitch it into an agent with a series of different skills behind it, depending on how savvy you are. So I'm going to put in the link here. It's a markdown file. Don't be intimidated by the term markdown and the look of it looks like code. It's just text. So all you're going to do is you're going to take this and you can copy and paste it into your LLM of choice. So free gift for showing up here. Oh, sorry, I'm sending that to the waiting room. Here you go. So you're going to get this, and it is really long. It's much longer than what it shows on the screen because it has to include all the context of what some of my thinking and all the things that we've covered here and even more. And so what it has is it has the good, better, and best for a few shot examples that are in there, and it'll give you some coaching tips on what to do. So what it won't do, it won't teach you to be a strategic thinker. It's not going to help you identify which problem matters most. You have to still do that. You have to know your specifics, know your stakeholders and their priorities. It'll prompt you on making sure that you are clear in those, but you need to understand your company's politics. How is this going to work well and make the right calls? So you're going to drop it in. You're going to draft your pitch. You're going to drop it in. You can even just drop in a deck that you already have. It works with that too. Or you could paste it in text and you're going to get an evaluation back. You'll iterate it and keep iterating until it says that you're hit your best. Okay. Practice this. Speak into a mirror, speak into a video, record yourself, and you're going to nail it. So here's an example of some of the things that will happen. If you talk about your data first, the market numbers first, the size of the problem first, it'll tell you that, hey, this is a good response, but it's not compelling, right? We need to lead with the emotion of who is actually the person we're talking about, the protagonist in the story and what they're experiencing. If you think about just a short-term feature versus long-term, it's also going to talk about that. Hey, this feels like something small. Let's make it a little bit bigger. If we're going to have this kind of a pitch, usually it's a higher stakes item that we can think about long-term impact. So here's what you're taking with you at the end of this now. So we've got a few minutes left for Q&A. I will do some live examples too. So if you want to bring me an example, I'll show you how to modify it a little bit better if you've got one in mind. But you've got the framework, the 3X structure, all this stuff that we talked about. You've got some simple tactics, and now you've got your AI accountability tool, your partner that's going to help you with that too. Remember, this is a survival skill now in the age of AI. It's replacing the people that just rely on tools too much and we need to be able to think. That's a different topic altogether, but then need to be able to communicate compellingly and clearly after we do all of our thinking. Because AI is replacing the PMs who just execute and do what they're told. Those people won't be around much longer. if they are right now. It's accelerating the way that PMs who can think strategically and can communicate. This is a multiplier for them. So we covered one topic in really good depth, but we didn't talk about all the other stuff, all the other potential frameworks for influence that you can add to this, how to choose what strategic bet to make based on your research, how to think about winning those stakeholders before you even get into the room with a pitch, and making sure that you can connect your features, every single feature you have on your roadmap, to customer and business outcomes. That's not easy to do. And then you can use AI to multiply your competence. Those are things we're not covering here. So if you want to go deeper on things like that, you can join the full course that we've got, the Influential PM. We'll talk about strategy. We'll talk about stakeholders a lot like this, and how to have significance in your job. Then we'll multiply it with AI just the same way you got this accountability partner. Okay. Now, if you want, there's an early bird discount for showing up here of 25% off. You're going to get that in a link in your inbox as well. And then if you have more questions, you can ping me on LinkedIn too if you're not following me there. All right. Here are some of the things to build your competence that you'll see in that course too. Forgot to mention it. So this is just one of the set of frameworks. There's a million more. This is actually one version of the 3-act principle too, as we do storytelling as well. Here's the emotional arc in storytelling too. We cover a bunch of different things too. All right, time for some questions. Anybody have a real pitch idea that they want to bring up? And then we could just workshop it right now too. Or if you have a question about any of this stuff, we can go through those. The chat is open, or you can come off mute and talk too.
Right. Brandon, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jaya.
I think this seems a pretty good framework for one directional approach where we find the problems and we convince our stakeholders to get buy-in for it. But oftentimes it's not as easy. It's not the same as one directional. Sometimes we get requests from top down, like someone in the leadership team saw something and they got really impressed with it and they wanted to just do it. How do we adapt this framework to convince, is there a real customer problem there? Does this really make sense for our business? Are we just getting impressed because someone else did it and we also do it without understanding if it's the same dynamics? How does this framework adapt to top-down requests?
Yeah. Think about this as your destination. If you get a request, you need to be able to have all of these elements to provide context to the rest of your team. Otherwise, you're just handing something over, right? And then what good are you doing? So whether you believe in it or not, you need to find a way to gather context. So go and find examples of where this idea actually matters to somebody as a single human. Then find the data to back up that this is a good idea or a bad one that you can bring back to decision makers if you're not making these decisions, and then be able to practice this with your team. So let's say that you don't have a lot of decision-making authority. You can still practice this at a micro level in your sprint planning sessions. So talk about, hey, these are the next things that are on our roadmap that we believe in, and here's why. So it can be a single conversation with an individual practicing this skill to just get people to lean in on what you're saying. And then it helps you structure your thinking around, oh, I need an emotional story. I need to know what metrics matter to this person I'm talking to. So you may not have the ability to actually pitch something, but you can practice this. Now, getting out of delivery mode because you're being told what to do and executing somebody else's roadmap, that's an entirely different webinar. I do have something else on strategic thinking that you can then, another lightning lesson. And then I also talk about this on LinkedIn a lot. It's also the basics for the course that I teach is can you do strategic thinking and you don't actually have permission to do it. So we won't be able to get into everything here, but at least use this as the framework of things you got to fill in.
Sure. I look for that other recording you were mentioning.
Okay. All right. Does this framework also work for interview stories? Yeah. Think about this also as the destination of what you're going to, the output, the ideal of your customer interviews. So if you're going to interview somebody, take back with them their real story. That's what a user story was meant for. Can I tell the context of a situation of a real user going through a real problem with a real pain point that I can feel emotionally? So interview your users about their life and their situation, not about your product. That's going to get you the ability to then plug in their story into this framework. How to adapt this framework as a new joiner to a company. I think this is great. If you can tell the story of what is mattering to the users today, not pitching something new, but if you can be able to tell that story of, I know a person that uses our product and experiences these challenges, and our product is solved for this in some way. And in fact, that user is one of thousands. Like that gives you not only context, knowledge about what matters to your customers, but it also gives you pride in what you're doing and being able to then explain what matters next is where you should be going next. So it's just, can you demo your product when you first start? This is the same way. Can you tell the story of your product and your company? Okay, example test case. All right, great. Trying to sell an automated pen testing suite in a crowded market. Why do we win? We've got more coverage than others. The emotion of the personas, a tired IT analyst fighting 200 alerts per minute. Ooh, an overwhelmed CIO, CISO trying to justify a proactive security measure to the board. It's the last part that you need to focus on first in a way. You've already got the emotional example, but you need to talk more about why this matters pragmatically to executives. And proactive security or prevention of risk is a difficult story to tell logically because what's the likelihood of something happening? It's difficult. So what I like to do here is to think about what is the consequence of this going poorly. So if we don't test things well because we have an overwhelmed staff that's not able to get through every single one of the alerts, and we publish anyways to deploy to the market, what could potentially happen? We could potentially have a security breach. Okay, what's the consequence of a security breach? Yeah, reputational damage, fines in some cases. If you're in a regulated market, you could have data loss, and you could never recover from that. So now you're using the executive level buzzwords of huge reputational loss, never recovering. And now we've connected the emotional story that you can pull out from the IT analyst that just never can keep up with all of the alerts that are happening. But you know what can? We can take that same person's 20-hour day of spending just looking at alerts and turn it into 2 hours. We have the ability to move that and provide relief to that individual and relief to the CEOs so that they know that they aren't worried about a shaky product going to market and losing their reputation and potentially their entire business. So thank you for the example, Muli. Appreciate that. All right, great to see everybody. I'll see you next time.